NANI?!
Ghostwire Tokyo is one of the weirdest games I've ever played. Developed by Tango Gameworks, known for their work on the Evil Within series, it's defined as action-adventure, with a really unique premise and the kind of content that just really makes me wonder what they're putting in the water over in Japan. The whole thing takes place in Tokyo after it's become ground zero for some kind of paranormal event, which has caused everyone in the city to vanish, leaving behind only their clothes. It's like Thanos clicking his fingers all over again, only this time with a lot less forced sentimentality. You're playing as a dude named Aikido who looks like a courier turned J-pop singer, possessed by a ghost detective named KK who grants him superpowers, which allows him to fight back against the legions of ghosts and demons now inhabiting the city, most of whom look a hell of a lot like Slender Man. The city is also cordoned off by harmful clouds of fog, and Aikido sports some pretty gnarly looking defects which seem to be related to his newfound powers. Back in the day, all it took was to get bitten by a radioactive spider or jabbed up with government steroids to get superpowers, but in Aikido's case, it's a potentially world-ending cataclysmic event. Now, there's actually very little information given early on here as to what's actually happened, and I don't know what it involves, but it sure can't be good. We're talking human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria! Enough, I get the point!
Speaking of which, throughout the game you'll also interact with dogs, tanukis, you'll buy food and drinks from merchant cats, fax reclaim spirits through a payphone and shoot wind, water and fire out of your fingertips. Yeah, that's pretty much Ghostwire Tokyo. Thanks for watching. Nah, but seriously, this is the most Japanese game I've played in recent memory, and you've kinda got to appreciate the cultural aspect the whole thing has. The whole thing's really tapping into the roots of Japanese folklore and urban legends. The masks for the main antagonists are apparently used to represent angry female demons, or in the real world, your mum. You interact with various spirits and creatures throughout the game as well, different forms of yokai, most of whom you can absorb as a power source to turn into player upgrades. It's definitely got a bit of a captivating story as well, and despite everything going on in Tokyo, Aikido's main focus is to find and rescue his sister who's in the hospital after being wounded in a house fire. And his interactions with these other characters, specifically the main antagonist, has a bit of a direct impact on both his life and hers. More than that though, I'm not going to say for fear of spoilers, but let me just say that the story is really one of the main reasons I kept playing. It's got that good combination of being batshit insane, but also making enough sense that you can follow what's happening, and never find yourself scratching your head like you're watching a weird Japanese version of a David Lynch film.
Bullshit.
There is the option to play through it with an English dub if you're that much of a scrub that you can't be bothered reading the subtitles, but I just want to say that if you do that unironically, well, you're dead to me. Either way though, the whole thing makes for a pretty unique experience. More so considering this is also a brand new IP. I know, it's amazing. A game released in 2022 that's not a sequel, a remake, or a goddamn remaster. Bad news for Xbox owners though, you guys are going to have to wait 12 months to get your hands on this thing, as right now it's only exclusive to the PC and the PS5. Yeah, as if both those new gen consoles didn't have enough to bitch about already. Now, before I get too far into things, I do want to mention too that this video is sponsored by SteelSeries. These guys make really good keyboards, gaming mice, gaming pads, and headsets. Right now I'm using the Apex 7 keyboard, I've got the Rival 5 mouse, not to mention their huge ass LED prism cloth. And I'm pretty stoked to be able to offer a discount on all of these products, along with everything else in their catalog. To get that discount's really easy, just use the promo code GMAN at checkout and you'll get 12% off your next order, which is, 12% more than you'd save otherwise. So head on over to steelseries.com to get started and yeah, enjoy the rest of the video. First off, I do want to say that I think this is an incredible looking game at times and definitely one of the best looking digital representations of Tokyo I think I've ever seen in a video game. Previously, Cyberpunk 2077 held the record for the most screenshots I took with a game I was playing, but I think Ghostwire might actually beat it out here by a pretty tight margin. I went to Japan back in 2018, and although my memory's pretty foggy about the whole trip, mostly because my diet consisted primarily of beer and whiskey, there were still a lot of moments in the game that I had to stop and check the location I was at, because it looked really familiar to me, like somewhere I might have stopped when I was there on holidays to take photos. Ray tracing's been put to really good use here. There's all these reflections in the puddles of water, and the way that light catches on surfaces and bounces back just looks amazing. It also helps that it's raining every couple of minutes to give a reason why the whole place looks so damn wet all the time. Funnily enough though, I think the game actually looks at its worst whenever it rains, only because it really kind of seems to clutter the image up, and that rain effect also kind of looks crappy. It's these really big fat water droplets which kind of look like something off an old PS3 or Xbox 360 game. Look, I'm just gonna say it, but I still think the best rain effects in video games are the ones back on the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and I just don't know how modern games still can't beat this. It's also got those typical Tango Gameworks sequences where you're moving through these dream world / hallucinations where the environment shifts in real time as your surroundings seamlessly merge into the path ahead. And this stuff is just downright artistic. More than that too, the streets of Tokyo and the buildings you move through are all covered in the clothes of the former citizens who have been whisked away in this event, and standing in like an empty subway station, the clothes of all the salarymen, the school kids and commuters still littering the ground is haunting stuff. Really captures that feeling of being the last human alive in a city that's been wiped out in an instant. The thing is though, I don't really think the game is scary, like, at all. It is definitely surreal and bizarre and, like I said, batshit insane, but scary is not a word that I'd use to describe the theme here, which might be a bit of a disappointment considering the pedigree of Tango Gameworks and the stuff that they've worked on in the past. Evil Within 2, for instance, had moments in it that made my balls retract so far back into my body that I could have gargled them with a glass of water. You can tell that they've really tried though, and maybe I've been like spoiled or desensitized or something, but none of it just really worked for me on that level. There's this recurring enemy that you have to fight, which is a tall, gotta be 7 or 8 foot tall woman with gardening shears. Yeah, which totally isn't trying to tap into the recent popularity of giant women, is it? Anyway, she's got the typical long, black, wavy hair and crooked smile, only it just kind of feels like that look's been so played out by this point.
So played.
And the ghetto slender men you fight for the vast majority of the game just aren't that spooky either. Now look, I get that these creatures have been rooted in urban legends for decades, if not hundreds of years, but that kind of visual design just really feels like commonplace now, and I just feel like it makes their appearance in the game much less shocking. Still though, visually I find it pretty hard to fault the game. I had decent performance pretty much the entire time with DLSS turned on, ray tracing enabled and everything else running maxed out. The lack of an FOV slide is going to take the jam out of a few people's jelly donuts, but it never seemed to be that much of an issue to me. The Unreal Engine 4 games always seem to be a bit up and down with how they're going to perform, but with my rig, this one seemed to run pretty well, which is impressive considering the amount of crap that's going to be flying all over your screen at times. Tokyo manages to feel like an actual true-to-life place, but it's also been separated from reality. Oops, there goes gravity. And the combination of the real world combined with the nether is a captivating premise that really makes you want to get to the bottom of what the hell's happening here. Man, that sentence sounded like a complete wank. Once the honeymoon period wears off though, you'll see it's otherwise just a pretty standard open world experience. Tokyo's a big place, man, full of 5-way intersections, impossibly tall skyscrapers, and various back alleys full of used panties vending machines. So thankfully you've got various gates around the map which can be cleansed and then turned into fast travel points to save you having to walk from one side to the other like a complete idiot. Oh yeah, remember how everyone was talking about bad UIs recently with Elden Ring? Yeah, well take a look at the map screen in this thing.
What the hell were you thinking?
Outside of that, it's got that old ability where you can highlight enemies and objects of interest through solid objects because it seems almost mandatory now that every single game ever made has to have this. This comes into play during those missions where you got to do what's essentially follow a slow moving NPCs. They lead you to some kind of point of interest. In Ghostwire, it's the spiritual residue left behind by someone since long gone, but it's still that same routine of just following a slowly walking character until they reach a key location, and it is just as boring. You can interact with cats, trash pandas, and dogs, which you can pet by the way, who will often lead you to important items. You can give offerings at shrines to get temporary buffs. There's yokai hidden around the city you can interact with and absorb upgrades. Like this guy here who's like an umbrella with legs, which again is an actual creature from Japanese folklore. I actually found it pretty fun navigating around the city too. They were smart enough to remove fall damage, which encourages exploring these various rooftops and kind of removes that threat of a bullshit fall to your death. Plus there's ledge grappling and a gliding mechanic which makes navigation fast and easy. There's even a specific spirit you can use as like a makeshift grapple point to reach these high spots. Coming back to what I was saying before too, it's really the writing and the story that carries a lot of this side content, and the vast majority of side missions you're going to be doing here outside of the main story are for the spirits of Tokyo's former residents who are trapped between this world and the next. and this really is some of the most interesting stuff. From things like having to clear out pesky demons from a possessed house. In fact, there's actually a lot of demons in Tokyo using this place as free real estate. Or better than that, helping one ghost drop a log one last time before crossing over. Yeah, I'm not even kidding, there's like a side mission where you have to find toilet paper for some poor ghost who's stuck on the shitter and has no paper to wipe his ass.
Come again.
And look, I can kinda get that. The last thing you want, whether you're dead or alive, is to be caught on the throne without any bog roll. Side missions earn you a bit of cash, but also often components crucial to progressing through some of the skill trees, again giving you more of an incentive to seek these out. But the vast majority of the open world content here involves finding and collecting spirits. Basically, the spirits of the people who went missing during that initial event, and these are found scattered randomly throughout the city. They might be in the middle of the road, or they might be on top of one of the highest buildings. At times, you might need to save them from these giant cubes that look like something out of Hellraiser. Sometimes you might get them as quest rewards, but either way, it still boils down to holding down the right mouse button and then collecting them inside your little spirit paper thingy. Then once you've got enough, transferring them through a payphone to release them off in Spiritland. Yes, this is an actual mechanic. And if you want to 100% the game, well, you're going to have to do this for 240,000 spirits in total.
God damn!
Now, in the game's defense, you do get these in bulk, and it can be anywhere from 100 up to 1,000 at a time. But I mean, even then, right, let's say you get 300 spirits each time, right? That's still roughly 1,000 spirits you're going to have to go around collecting to hit 100%. The worst thing too is when the spirits are caught behind afflictions, which can only be removed by replicating a hand pattern. And this is just a time-wasting feature. And the worst part about it is that you kinda have to get them, at least some of them, because turning these things in is way faster than trying to level up through the missions. For a mission, you might get 500 to 1,000 XP. For handing in a bunch of these things, in the realm of maybe 20 to 30, you'll get upwards of 10,000 XP. And you don't need to be no Albert Einstein to see that those numbers don't add up. Was it Albert Einstein? He was good at maths, wasn't he? There's an upgrade available that shortens the time it takes to capture these, and let me say, that's going to be one of the first ones you're going to want to max out, considering it's one of the main mechanics you're going to be using. Suppose I should finally start talking about the combat. I mean, goddamn son, I'm about halfway through the video and I haven't said diddly squat.
Well, we're waiting.
Now, this might be FPS by definition here, but there's no shotguns or BFGs or anything like that. Most of the combat is done with your hands here through a combat form called ethereal waving, apparently being based off various hand signals derived from disciplines of Japanese religion. Awesome. So for us filthy Westerners, I guess it's like the equivalent of killing someone by giving them a thumbs up or giving them the shocker. Anyway, you've got 3 main attacks here. You've got a fast-firing wind attack that's good for hitting a single enemy. There's another one which is more close range using water, ideal at knocking enemies back. And then the last one's a fire-based attack, which is more of like an explosion dealing out splash damage. So you've got wind, water, and fire. All we're missing here is Earth and Heart. We can call Captain Planet in and have ourselves a good old-fashioned gangbang with Mother Earth. Enemies don't have weak spots or anything like that, so all you really have to do here is pelt them with either 3 of these attacks until you expose their core. Then you rip out that core like it's a loose tooth, finishing that enemy off for good.
Gotcha, bitch!
Now, there is a bit of strategy here because it does take like a second or so to pull these things out, so it's probably not the best idea to try to do this if you're getting ganged up on by a bunch of enemies at once.
Holy shit!
Thankfully, there's upgrades to make this process easier. You can upgrade it so you rip out those cores faster or charge up your attacks more quickly, or to give them a greater area of effect. But it is incredibly boring stuff to begin with, especially when all you've got is that basic wind attack. It does get exponentially better once you unlock those 2 other abilities, but the thing is, the elements are completely redundant because they don't really have any elemental effect on enemies at all. I mean, it's not like there's an enemy who's weak to fire or another one that's weaker to water, kind of begging the question as to why they're based off elements to begin with. Aside from that, all 3 of these can be charged up to do more damage, and charging them up is just so much more effective than using them in a single hit that you'd have to wonder why you'd ever bother firing them normally. That charged up fire attack does the most damage to enemies by a long shot, and the only reason to not use it is when you run out of ammo. You also get a hunting bow as well, and this thing might have been good if it actually had some kind of a purpose outside of just dealing extraneous damage. If you could use it on enemies to hit like an exposed weak spot or something, or if it staggered or stunned them, it actually might have been useful, but it really feels like it's got no purpose. I just kind of used it mainly against these floating bedsheet looking ghosts, and for the few rare times where your boy KK is whisked away and you're unable to use his powers. But I don't want to spoil that stuff, so for now I'll keep my lips sealed tighter than a duck's arsehole. I think it's also really odd for a game like this to not include some kind of a dash move, or even any basic evasive movement option, considering it's got enemies here who like to really charge in and dish out damage in a pretty wide arc. I mean, they've included a whole bunch of run-of-the-mill mechanics and features, yet they didn't include something like this that would have been incredibly useful during combat. I mean, look, not every single first-person game needs to have a dash move that you can spam until you get carpal tunnel syndrome, but I just think it definitely would have made sense here, considering a whole bunch of your abilities rely on being close to what you're attacking, and a quick, evasive option just would have been a godsend. Off the back of that too, I think the process for healing during combat is just a real chore, because the main way to get your health back is eating stuff like soda, candy, and street food. Only most of these don't fill back your entire health bar in a single go, sometimes not even close. So you gotta chomp down on these things multiple times like you're some poor diabetic having a sugar crash. You can get a little bit of health back from taking those enemy cores, but even when upgraded for the maximum return, it's still only 15 health points per core. And now consider your max health is going to be upwards of 150 or even 200, and yeah, you can kind of see how ineffective that is. It's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. On the other side of things, you've got the stealth, which is actually an option and quite effective. In fact, a lot of the time you're better off really trying to kill the visitors without getting seen. This is as easy as just walking up behind someone and performing a takedown to knock them out in like a single hit, or a purge as it's called in the game. You can even get these talismans that put down spirit bushes, which gives you your own little custom hiding spot, which is kind of cool. Talismans are actually one of the more creative mechanics here, even if they are a bit limited. Like being able to put down a stun talisman allows for an easy purge on the arse of a stunned enemy. It's much easier than having to play hopscotch around their attacks for a couple of minutes while you whittle their health down. I just wish I had have known about this earlier in the game as opposed to right up near the end. Would have saved me a lot of sweat, tears, and blood-filled stools, let me tell you. But I think by far the crappiest aspect of the combat is how they've tried to include this perfect block mechanic. Now, this isn't anything new. If you've played any game featuring melee combat in the last couple of decades, well then chances are you've seen this in one form or another. It's basically where during combat, if you block at the last possible moment, instead of simply blocking, you'll basically parry, putting the opponent off balance. It's a fine system in theory, only it doesn't really work all that well in Ghostwire.
Bullshit!
Mostly because the animations don't seem to match up to when you think you'd need to press it. Let me explain. Let's take this enemy for instance, right? Now, look closely at the point in this animation when I have to press the block button to perform a successful parry. And call me crazy, but to me it looks like her leg is past the point where my body is. Now, look at this frame of the animation, right? Which is before the kick connects, which visually is when I'd have thought you're supposed to block the attack. You know, ideally before it hits you and not after. I think the main problem is just how these enemy attacks have been animated. You just don't get a super clear indication of when a hit is going to connect with certain attacks. Probably why I didn't have that much of an issue deflecting projectiles, because at least I could see visually the distance the projectile was from my character. Whereas, you know, my really weird looking kick animation is animated in a way which makes it really tricky to tell when the point of impact is. I spent a solid 15 to 20 minutes at one point trying to get used to perfect blocking, and I thought I'd gotten pretty good at it. But even by the time I'd finished the whole thing, around like the 12 or so hour mark, I still hadn't really gotten the hang of it. What's even more weirder than that is that they don't even bother teaching you about it until pretty late in the game. The very first combat tutorial shows you how to block, but unless you read into the menu and looked up the moveset, well, you wouldn't even know that this perfect blocking was a feature. I just feel like there's no real reason to do it either. I mean, you can get an upgrade so each time you perfectly block, you get a bit of ammo back, but I was flush with ammo most of the time anyway, and I just don't think it's worth the risk of taking a hit when you can just hang back and stay out of harm's way. When you unlock that talisman which locks the enemies down in place, it just becomes way more easy and useful for getting behind some of those more dangerous visitors for an easy and quick takedown. That's really my main takeaway from the combat, and I feel like the only reason I got better at Ghostwire was because of the upgrades and the tools I got, as opposed to getting better at the whole thing fundamentally. Does that make sense? It's like I was killing enemies faster and more effectively, but only because I had the upgrades that made me, charge up my shots faster, or I had upgrades that made my attacks have a bigger radius. I wasn't learning how to better overcome these enemies in a more effective way, I just had better tools to deal with them by that point. There's an upgrade that makes it so enemies knocked on the ground can have their cores ripped out instantly, called the Quick Purge, and I mean, that's not a skill-based ability. It just means that once I knock someone over, I can now press the right mouse button when the prompt comes up and kill them at leisure. And one of the last abilities you unlock is called Wiring In, where you go into like a rage mode and can do increased damage for about 30 seconds. And yeah, I guess that's skill-based if you consider pressing a single button to be a skill. It'd be like, imagine playing the original Doom, and then in that first level you get the plasma rifle and a bunch of ammo. I mean, that doesn't make you good at the game, you're just being given the means to make the whole thing a lot easier. Now compare this to something like Doom Eternal, and if you suffered through it, the Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2. I mean, say what you will about those games, but if you stuck them out until the end, well, you definitely came out as a better player. In Ghostwire, I was better at the end of the game because my health bar was double the size it was when I started, and now I could shoot out projectiles 50% faster. I mean, yeah, whoa, such skill. And I think at the end of the day, to me, that's why the combat just felt so unfulfilling. I don't think this makes it a bad game, don't get me wrong, but it's just not a combat system that's really gonna bake your noodle. I don't know, man, I guess I was just kinda hoping for more depth, considering how deep the other elements of the storytelling and the lore seem to go.
Total fucking bullshit.
Ghostwire is one of those games that has the courtesy to tell you when its campaign's coming to an end, the point of no return as we call it, and once you're finished, yes, you can go back out there and then collect all the stuff you missed and finish all those side missions. Getting to that point took me around 12 hours on hard mode, and although the story up until then had been really compelling and really kept me hooked, I just found that once the story tied itself up, I just didn't have the motivation to keep playing. Like I said in the opening of the video, Ghostwire is certainly a fascinating game. It's got one of the most interesting stories I've experienced in recent memory, and it looks absolutely stunning visually. I think the ultimate clincher is if you're going to find the combat and the other elements addictive enough to keep you hooked, or if once all is said and done, you'll find your work is completed and then want to transcend onto the next life.